There is a moment, every night, that most people rush past without noticing. The moment between the day ending and sleep beginning. The moment when the noise of the world finally quiets, and something else, something that has been waiting all day for your attention, begins to surface. Most people fill this moment with a screen, with one more scroll, one more video, one more distraction to keep that surfacing thing from fully arriving. Because what arrives in that quiet space is often uncomfortable. A feeling you pushed down at 9 in the morning. A reaction you suppressed in a meeting. A truth about yourself you didn't have time to feel, while the day was demanding your performance. Carl Jung spent his life studying what happens to these suppressed things, where they go, what they become, and most importantly, what they cost you when they are never allowed to surface and be witnessed. Tonight, we are not going to rush past that moment. We are going to slow down enough to understand it. Let your body settle into wherever you are right now. You don't need to do anything with this information except receive it. There is nothing to perform here. No one is watching. No one needs anything from you for the next 20 minutes. Just listen. 1. What you suppressed today did not disappear. Jung believed something that modern psychology has since confirmed in laboratory after laboratory. Suppression is not deletion. When you push a feeling down, when you swallow the anger at your coworker, when you smile through the hurt of being dismissed, when you tell yourself you're fine when you are not, that feeling does not evaporate. It goes somewhere. Jung called this place the personal unconscious, a kind of internal storage room where everything you have not had time, courage, or permission to feel gets placed, carefully, almost lovingly, by a mind that is trying to protect you from being overwhelmed. This is not a flaw in your design, it is a mercy. If you had to feel everything in full the moment it happened, you would not survive most days. The mind suppresses to keep you functional, to keep you showing up, performing, surviving the demands of an ordinary Tuesday. But here is what Jung understood that most people never learn. What is stored does not stay quiet. It accumulates, and eventually, in dreams, in unexplained moods, in reactions that feel too big for their trigger, in the heaviness that arrives for no clear reason, it asks to be acknowledged. Tonight, in this quiet space before sleep, we are going to give it that acknowledgement. Not by analyzing every feeling from your day, simply by allowing this idea to settle. That what you suppressed today is not a failure, it is information. Waiting patiently for a moment exactly like this one. 2. The shadow is not your enemy. Of all of Jung's contributions to psychology, none has been more misunderstood than his concept of the shadow. People hear the word and imagine something sinister, a hidden evil, a darkness to be feared and locked away. This is not what Jung meant. The shadow, in Jung's framework, is simply everything about yourself that you have not yet integrated into your conscious identity. It includes the things you consider negative, your anger, your jealousy, your selfishness, your fear. But it also includes things that are not negative at all, your power, your desires, your creativity, your needs, that were, for whatever reason, deemed unacceptable somewhere along the way, and pushed into hiding. Think, for a moment, about what you were taught, very early, was not allowed. Maybe anger was dangerous in your home, so you learned to be endlessly patient, even when patience was not what you actually felt. Maybe wanting things for yourself was labeled selfish, so you learned to want quietly, or not at all, at least not where anyone could see. Maybe sadness made the people around you uncomfortable, so you learned to package your pain as humor, or as strength, or as nothing at all. These adaptations were intelligent. They were the mind doing exactly what it needed to do to keep you safe, accepted, loved within the specific environment you grew up in. But the parts that got hidden did not disappear. They went into the shadow, and they have been waiting there, sometimes for decades, for a moment of safety in which they could finally be acknowledged. Jung believed that healing does not come from eliminating the shadow. It comes from turning toward it, from recognizing it, slowly, gently, without judgment, as a legitimate part of who you actually are. Tonight, you do not need to confront anything specific. Just notice, somewhere in your body, somewhere beneath the surface of your thoughts, that there are parts of you waiting to be acknowledged without punishment. You can let them exist, right now, without needing to act on them, fix them, or explain them. Just let them be real. 3. Why what you resist in others often lives in you. Jung made an observation that, once understood, changes the way you experience almost every difficult relationship in your life. He noticed that the qualities we react to most strongly in other people are often the qualities we have most thoroughly rejected in ourselves. Think about the person who irritates you disproportionately. Not the person who did something genuinely harmful. That is a different category entirely. But the person whose mere presence, whose mere way of being, produces an irritation that feels larger than the situation seems to warrant. The person who is unapologetically confident, and it bothers you more than it should. The person who sets boundaries easily, and something in you tightens when you watch them do it. The person who seems comfortable taking up space, asking for what they want, prioritizing themselves, and you find yourself, almost involuntarily, judging them for it. Jung called this projection. We see, in others, the exact quality we have suppressed in ourselves. And because we cannot tolerate that quality consciously, because somewhere long ago we learned it was unacceptable, we experience a kind of allergic reaction when we see someone else expressing it freely. This is not a flaw in your character. It is the shadow, doing what the shadow does, making itself known indirectly, because it cannot yet be acknowledged directly. Tonight, without forcing yourself to analyze anything specific, simply hold this question gently, like something you're examining in low light. What is it, in other people, that bothers you more than it logically should? You don't need an answer right now. Just let the question exist. Sometimes the simple act of asking begins a process that the conscious mind cannot complete on command, but the unconscious mind continues working on long after you've stopped thinking about it directly. This is part of why dreams matter so much in Jung's work. The unconscious continues processing, long after the conscious mind has gone quiet. Which brings us to where we are headed tonight. 4. Dreams are not nonsense. They are letters from a part of you that cannot speak directly. Jung disagreed, fundamentally, with the idea that dreams are random neural noise. He believed dreams were communications, not literal messages to be decoded like a puzzle, but genuine expressions from the unconscious. The part of you that holds everything suppressed, everything unintegrated, everything still waiting to be understood. The unconscious, Jung believed, cannot speak the language of the conscious mind directly. It does not use logical argument. It does not write you a clear memo explaining what it needs. It speaks in image, in symbol, in the strange, often illogical narrative structure of dreams. This is why dreams so often feel important, even when you cannot explain why, and why they so often feel frustratingly difficult to interpret. You are receiving a communication in a language you were never taught to read fluently. Jung spent decades developing a method for beginning to understand this language, not through fixed dictionaries where one symbol always means one thing, but through careful, personal attention to what each symbol means specifically to the dreamer. A house, in your dream, does not mean what a house means in someone else's dream. It means what house means to you, shaped by every house you have lived in, every feeling you associate with home, every memory the image of a house carries specifically for your own unconscious. Tonight, as you move towards sleep, you do not need to force any particular dream to occur. You simply need to create the conditions where, if your unconscious has something to communicate, it has a slightly more open door to communicate it through. This door opens through receptivity, through arriving at sleep without having armored yourself against your own inner material, with one more episode, one more scroll, one more distraction. By listening to this, by sitting in this quiet, unhurried attention to your inner world before sleep, you have already begun opening that door. 5. Individuation, the lifelong project Jung believed mattered more than any other. There is a word at the center of Jung's entire body of work, a word that describes, more than any other, what he believed a human life was actually for. Individuation. The process of becoming who you actually are, not who you were trained to perform, not who circumstance shaped you into out of necessity, but the full, integrated, authentic self that exists beneath all the adaptations. Jung believed most people never complete this process, not because they are incapable, but because the process requires something most people spend their entire lives avoiding. It requires turning toward the shadow, toward the suppressed anger, the buried desires, the hidden grief, the parts of yourself that were exiled because they were inconvenient or unacceptable to the people around you. Individuation does not mean becoming a different person. It means becoming a more complete version of the person you already are, integrating the parts that were split off, brought into hiding, never allowed to exist in the light. This is slow work. It is not the work of a single insight or a single breakthrough night. It is the work of years, sometimes decades, sometimes a lifetime that only completes the project in its final chapters. But it begins, Every single time, for every single person who has ever done it, in small moments exactly like this one. A moment of quiet, a moment where, instead of distracting yourself from what is surfacing, you simply let it surface. A moment where you stop performing the version of yourself the day required, and gently, without urgency, return to whatever is actually there underneath. You do not need to complete this process tonight. You only need to take one more small step toward it. And you are already doing that, simply by being here, listening, present. 6. The persona, and the exhaustion of wearing it too long. Jung used a specific word for the mask we wear in the world. Persona, borrowed from the Latin term for the masks worn by actors in ancient theater. The persona is not inherently dishonest. It is the necessary social face we present, the professional version of ourselves at work, the composed version at family gatherings, the version that knows how to navigate situations smoothly, without exposing every raw and unfinished part of our inner life to everyone we encounter. Some persona is healthy, even necessary. The world could not function if everyone walked around in total, unfiltered exposure of every internal state. But Jung warned of something specific, a danger that grows the longer the persona is worn without relief. The danger of beginning to believe you are only the mask, of losing touch, gradually, with whatever exists beneath it, of performing competence so consistently that you forget what genuine ease feels like, of performing strength so reliably that you lose access to the parts of you that are tired, that need rest, that are allowed, fundamentally allowed, to not be strong all the time. This is part of why the moment before sleep matters so much. It is one of the few times in an ordinary day when the persona can be set down, when there is no audience requiring the performance, when you can simply exist without needing to be composed, capable, or anything other than exactly what you actually are in this moment. If you have spent today wearing a mask that felt heavier than usual, if you performed calm when you felt anything but calm, if you smiled through something that deserved a different response entirely, you can set that down now. Nothing is required of you here. No audience, no performance, no mask. Just you, finally, as you actually are tonight. 7. The wounded healer, why your pain is not separate from your purpose. Jung introduced a concept, drawn partly from ancient mythology, that has quietly reshaped how an entire field of psychology understands healing. The wounded healer, the idea that the capacity to genuinely help another person through suffering is built, almost entirely, from having survived your own. Not survived in the sense of simply continuing to exist, survived in the deeper sense, having faced the wound honestly, having metabolized it rather than only suppressing it, having allowed it to become part of your understanding, rather than something permanently hidden and unspoken. This is uncomfortable to hear if you are currently in pain, because it can sound, mistakenly, like a demand to be grateful for your suffering, or to rush towards some silver lining before you have finished feeling what you are feeling. That is not what this means. It means something gentler and ultimately more hopeful. It means that whatever you are carrying right now, whatever wound, whatever grief, whatever suppressed pain surfaced today and is surfacing again now, in this quiet, it is not separate from who you are becoming. It is, in some way you may not yet be able to see, part of the material from which something genuinely valuable will eventually be built. Not despite the wound, through it. You do not need to find meaning in your pain tonight. You do not need to extract a lesson before you are ready. You only need to know, as you let yourself rest with whatever you are carrying, that this carrying is not wasted. It is, slowly, becoming something. 8. Active imagination. Jung's method for befriending the unconscious. Jung developed a technique, late in his career, that he considered one of his most important contributions. He called it active imagination. The practice of engaging the images, feelings, and figures that arise from the unconscious, not analyzing them from a cold distance, but allowing yourself to genuinely meet them, almost as you would meet another person. If a feeling of sadness arises tonight, Jung's method would not ask you to immediately understand why. It would ask you, gently, to simply be with the sadness, to let it have a presence, to not rush it away, and not rush toward fixing it either. If an image arises, a memory, a face, a place you haven't thought of in years, the invitation is the same. Let it be present. Let it exist in your awareness without needing to immediately interpret what it means. This is different from how most of us are trained to relate to our inner experience. We are trained to fix, to solve, to move past discomfort as quickly as possible. Jung's method asks for something almost opposite: a patient, curious, non-judgmental presence with whatever arises, trusting that the unconscious, given enough safety and enough time, will reveal what it needs to reveal, in its own time, in its own language. You do not need to do anything active right now. Simply notice, without forcing, whatever wants to surface in this quiet. A feeling, an image, a memory, a face. Let it be there. You do not need to understand it yet. Understanding, Jung believed, is rarely the first step. Presence is. 9. Integration. What healing actually looks like. There is a misunderstanding, very common, about what it means to heal. Most people imagine healing as elimination, getting rid of the painful feeling, removing the difficult memory, erasing the wound until it no longer exists. Jung's understanding of healing was fundamentally different. Healing, for Jung, was integration. Not the disappearance of the difficult material, but its inclusion, bringing what was exiled back into relationship with the rest of who you are. Not pretending the anger, the grief, the shame, the fear never existed, but finding a way to hold them as legitimate parts of a complex, whole human being, rather than enemies to be defeated or secrets to be hidden. This is why suppression never actually works long-term. You cannot integrate what you refuse to acknowledge. You can only push it further into hiding, where it continues to exert influence. Through unexplained moods, through reactions too large for their triggers, through the heaviness that arrives for no clear reason at the end of an otherwise ordinary day. Tonight, as you continue to settle, you are not trying to eliminate anything. You are simply making room. Room for whatever surfaced today to exist, briefly, in your awareness, without judgment, without immediate need to resolve it, without rushing it back into hiding. This room you are making right now, this small, quiet act of allowing, is itself a form of integration. You don't need to do more than this. This is enough. 10. The self, what you are becoming underneath everything you have suppressed. Jung believed that beneath the persona, beneath the shadow, beneath every adaptation and suppression and exiled part of your psyche, there exists something whole. He called this the self, capitalized, distinct from the smaller, day-to-day ego that handles ordinary decisions and social navigation. The self, in Jung's framework, is the total integrated potential of who you actually are. Not who you were trained to be, not who circumstance required you to become. The complete version, shadow and light, strength and vulnerability, everything suppressed and everything expressed, finally existing together rather than in conflict. Jung believed that the entire project of a human life, consciously or not, moves toward this integration, slowly, imperfectly, across decades, through exactly the kind of small moments you are experiencing right now. A moment of quiet attention, a moment of allowing rather than suppressing, a moment where something that surfaced during the day is finally met, not fixed, not analyzed to exhaustion, simply met, before it is allowed to settle, and you are allowed to rest. You are, in this very moment, participating in that lifelong process, not through effort, through simple, patient presence with whatever is true for you tonight. 11. As you let go into sleep, whatever you suppressed today, the words you didn't say, the feeling you pushed down, the moment you performed strength you didn't actually feel, it has been heard tonight. Not analyzed, not fixed, not forced into resolution, simply heard. That is enough for tonight. You do not need to carry today's weight into tomorrow, in the same way you have been carrying it. You have made room. You have allowed what needed acknowledgement to be acknowledged. If something arises in your dreams tonight, an image, a face, a place, a feeling, let it come without needing to interpret it in this moment. There will be time for that, if it matters, in the morning. For now, simply let yourself rest. Let the persona you wore today rest with you. Let the shadow you've been avoiding exist quietly, without threat, somewhere nearby. Not pushed away, simply present, the way an old friend can sit in the same room without needing constant attention. You are whole, even in your unfinished places. You are becoming, even in your rest. There is nothing more required of you tonight. Let it go. Let yourself sleep. If this helped something in you settle tonight, if some part of what surfaced today finally felt acknowledged, that is exactly what this was for. If you want more content exploring the psychology of Carl Jung, the shadow, dreams, the unconscious, and the lifelong work of becoming whole, subscribe and come back tomorrow night. Sleep well.